Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode I have to do something about making these seats match the rest of the 680. So before I get stuck into the trimming, I just thought I'd fill you in on what I've been doing off camera. I've spent several days now fighting through this wiring. I'm not a wiring expert by any means, and trying to get this 260Z inch cluster to match in with the existing 240Z loom is a nightmare. Also dealing with the bits and pieces that people have cut and pasted together over the years. I actually also have a full extra 260Z cluster here, and it actually has a similar high-low beam switch mod. I assume that this is really loose, and I assume it must be a common problem that they wear out, so people have bypassed it and put in their own high-low beam thing. It also appears that because the headlights have already got relays in them to modify, originally the power goes straight through the stalk to the headlights, and it ends up burning out these stalks and stuff. So this has been switched over to relays, which is a much better way of doing it, running the headlights. But the issue is that they are also running now a negative switch. It switches the negative as opposed to switching the positive. I believe that's how they originally were. And this is not wired for that in here. So I'm just sorting through the wiring nightmare that has been, I've been dreaming about wiring. I've been doing so much of it. But it's getting there slowly. So in the engine bay, I'll take you to the engine bay. Believe it or not, this mess all actually makes sense to me, and even though it is it looks like a dog's breakfast, it is actually reasonably organised chaos, and I have an idea of what's going on here. I also will note that I now have the ignition set up. The power goes to the coil and it runs through the tacho, so it's all working the way it should. So there's power from the ignition now all the way through the coil. The ignition, I have brake lights, I just don't have headlights, indicators or wipers yet. So we still have a little bit further to go, but today we're going to work on trimming. So as wiring does not make for very interesting viewing, because I'm just sitting there doing this all day and it doesn't really make a very interesting video, I'm switching over and I've got to make these seats match with the rest of the interior. Now, the bulk of it is pretty good. What I'm going to change is the center panels, and because they're all velcroed in, I'm going to take them out and I'm going to remake these panels with the diamond stitched Alcantara so that they match in with everything else. So let's start pulling these apart and seeing what we got. So I took these cushions and I completely cut them apart, and these are now my patterns for the new pieces that I need to make up. So I flip them upside down onto the back of my Alcantara. I'm going to mark them out, cut them out, and go on from there. Okay, so now I've got my Alcantara pieces cut out to the pattern that I had. Now I need to glue them onto the foam backing. Okay, so now I've got my foam backing on all my bits, and I've got out my cheetah piece of cardboard, which has got my diamond pattern on it. I'm going to lay these over it, center it nicely, and then draw the diamond patterns on so I can start sewing the diamond shape onto these panels. So I use my cheater board to copy the diamond pattern onto all these pieces, and I've got them all nicely lined up. So now it's time to go through and start sewing on the nice blue diamond stitching. All right, I have my diamond stitching all done on all of these 4 panels. So these are the both of the seat bases and both of the backs for both seats. My next thing is I'm going to go around and if you can see all these little sort of cutouts in the corners, they actually get sewn together, so that gives it the sort of the depth enough to go over the cushion. So I'm going to sew all of these corners up, and then I'm going to get the original back sections, and these are going to go back onto these pieces. They're brand new, there's no reason why I shouldn't use them again. I've just unpicked them and I'll sew them back in. Okay, so I went through and I sewed a Velcro strip onto my my new piece, and I sewed up all the corners. And now I've gone through and taken the original base part, and I've stapled it into onto my other bit. So just using regular staples makes it stay in the right spot, so that when I sew it together, it doesn't sort of move and then the corners don't line up and the whole thing can go everywhere. Because what can quite easily happen is that one side can slightly move more than the other, and by the time you get all the way around, nothing lines up. So you need to try and keep it all together. And I found the staples are a good little trick to keep it all in the right spot. And now it's time to sew it all up. And then we have a finished cushion. It's all, so it Velcros together in the back, so the original foam's gone back in it. And that should hopefully sit nicely in my seat, and it looks great. Way better than the old stuff. So now I just have to do that 3 more times. That looks so much nicer than this, how they came. And also these bits never sort of fit that well anyway. They sort of look a bit ugly. These just sit just nice. So I've got to now pull these cushions apart so I can finish the last 2 cushions. All right, they both look great, so that is fantastic. I know they do have this silver stitching around the edges here and this silver embroidery, but there are still a few little sort of chrome bits left in the car, like the air vents and just the handle of the door handle itself around there, and little trims. So I think it sort of matches in like that, and I am too lazy to pull these apart and retrim these all again because of the little bit of stitching, so I'm going to leave that alone. But the last thing that I'm not quite happy with on these seats is these front panels, whatever you want to call them, do not sit very well because the Velcro doesn't line up great with the Velcro underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this little bits of Velcro off and resew on some bigger strips so that they grip nicely and don't move. So let's pull these apart and start sewing on some Velcro. All right, I've gone through, I've redone both of these. They stick on quite nicely now because I've got nice big bits of Velcro on the bottom. And now I think it's time to put them in the car. I think that looks great and it's going to match in really well. So I'm going to leave that now, and I think it's time to start having a look at these door trims and see if I can do some final fit up on them. Mrs. Jeff's just gotten home and decided to come and help me do some cleaning while I keep going on the door trim. So
anything to help the process.
That's it.
Moving along.
It's getting closer. All right.
Okay.
I'll give it to you.
Yep.
Rags, prep salt, spray and wipe. She's good.
Hot drink.
I'm going to keep going. And a home built by Jeff mug. Well, while I leave Mrs. Jeff on that, what I'm going to do is I pulled off this old Gearboot, which is looking pretty tired and also the completely wrong colour. So I'm going to use this as a pattern and see if I can make a nice Alcantara one. So Mrs. Jeff is still cleaning over there, and I'm going to sew up this gear lever boot, and it's going to have all nice French seams all the way around, so I'm going to go through first and sew all those together. So I've sewn all my little triangle pieces together, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm just going to sew in the French seam. So basically what it means is where I have sewn all of these bits together on the back, I peel them open and glue them down either side all the way down so they sit nice and flat on the back of the piece, and then I go through from the front and I sew either side of my original seam, and you get that nice double stitching all the way down. As you can see, the seams look nice and flat on the front now because I've folded down either side of the excess on the back and stuck it down. And now I'm going to run through on this front edge and do some nice double stitching along here, and it should look pretty swanky. So the last main thing to do before I actually sew the final seam together is I've just got myself a piece of old leather. This is a piece of black leather that I'm going to use as the tie for around the top. This is so you can get it on and off of the gear stick, and that just means laying this down along the edge, the top edge, folding over and then sewing it in so you've got a captive little seam in the top. And then we have a gear boot, a couple of little leather straps to tie it up around the gear stick, and I can cut them shorter if I want to.
Yeah, it's a great job. With the blue. Very nice.
Yeah. Little French stitching there. So,
Ooh la la.
ooh la la. All right, guys, that is it for this episode. Still waiting for the new distributor and stuff like that. And yeah, behind the scenes, as I told you, I'm getting there. I'm working my way through the wiring. It's just really tedious. But that's the last little bits and pieces of the stitching, I think. So sewing is done. It's so close. So close, I can taste it. All right, guys, see you next time.